Minutes in front of these drivers and plenty of opportunities to make up some time and lose it as well. The green flag is out. The drivers are on their way. Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting. Welcome back to the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. This is round number 6 of the season, coming to you today from Donington Park. My name is Ron Maunz. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Randall McGrew, and in the virtual production hauler, we have Adam Thompson. We're going to round off the first half of the season today, doing it yet again in the United Kingdom. This time we're at Donington, but for the second week in a row, we've got rain in the forecast. Wet and wild racing is what the doctor is ordering today here, Randall. So welcome to a baptism of fire to bring you back to these Weekend Warriors broadcasts.
Today's forecast, pain. It is going to be a painful race for these drivers out here. It is absolutely pouring rain. Most of the corners have puddles on the apexes, so we're going to see a lot of use of the karting line from these drivers, and it's going to be a wild one.
And speaking of a wild one, it's been a pretty wild start to this season. I gotta say, if I'm being completely honest, that I believe is the spec race of Ford standings, because I don't believe Felix Samos has turned a lap here in the FFs thus far. But that's a good preview as to what to expect in terms of the championship battles that we have to talk about for the spec race of Ford race later on here today. But I will say, talking about this Formula Ford season, it's been a pretty wild one thus far. We have still yet to leave the UK, and we're not going to be doing that up until the Okayama round, which is coming up on February the 8th. So we've been in the UK ever since the start of this season, all the way back on December 21st. So been a while, and got a good UK tour going on here. And here we go. Here are the Spec 1 standings here for the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. Ian Joyner been pretty dominant thus far this season, already has a couple wins, including a fantastic come-from-behind victory at Thruxton 1 week ago. He finds himself in the championship lead, 444 points on the board. Jason Green finds himself slotted in P2. Michael McConnell running at your top 3 in the Spec 1 standings. Gonna move on to Spec 2, which has been a bit more up in the air in terms of the other results to expect here. It's actually Jeff Wubker in the 309 car currently leading at only 4 points in front of the German of Boris Essman. Jeff Jacobson, who has the most amount of wins thus far this season in the Spec 2 category at 3, fittingly running at your top 3. Masters now, it's been absolute dominance from Jorg Mani. He has won every single race thus far this season, looking to try and keep his hopes of pulling off a Masters season sweep alive. 477 points on the board, a pretty long ways back. You have to find Antonio Reese. That's, I think, over 200 points or something like that. Either way, a ridiculous gap with Jim Brewster riding at your top 3 in the Masters class. But now into this qualifying session where these drivers are looking to have a very tricky time of things.
And we can see some of the corners are nice and grippy at the apexes because they're on the hill, so the water is sheeting away from those apexes. But we're going to coming up here on the final chicane of this lap, and I expect we're going to see a bit of a lake. You can see it forming there at the sides of the track, and the drivers are looking around for grip wherever they can find it. A big puddle there at the second apex, a much smaller one at the first one. We're on board now with Dalton. We're going to see what kind of line he takes through turn 1. Normally you run out here all the way into the pit exit, but look at that big puddle out there. You got to avoid it. And we're seeing, looking ahead, everybody's running the karting line, staying well wide of that puddle. He gets there into it a little bit and starts and has to correct. Now he's making his way down the hill through turn 2 up to the Craner curves, and we're going to probably see some puddles down here at the very bottom of the hill at this right-hander. There's a big one there at the apex. I got to run really wide. He's going to skirt through it, doesn't lose the car, thankfully, and now going to have to make his way through some traffic as he heads up through now up to turn 6 and approaching turn 7. McLean's going to be a very tricky right-hander. He's going to have to get the braking just right. He's going to keep a pretty tight line there. Not a very big puddle, but he still has a big snap of oversteer as he gets back to the throttle, trying to come off the apex up the hill to turn 8 Coppice. And it's a double apexer, and he really skates out there at the elevation change, looking for that grip. And now the long run down the straightaway. This is going to be the best passing opportunity of the day, trying to set up a move into this chicane, and it's going to be extra dangerous trying to go through this too wide today. Going to lose it under braking, loses the rears under braking, has to catch it, and is going to miss that chicane, and that lap won't count. He'll reset back to the pits.
And that'll just about do it from his qualifying session with less than 30 seconds left to go on the clock. But it shows you how treacherous and terrifying these conditions are here, Randall. And Tam also being a fan of the comment that you said at the very start of this show, talking about how the forecast is going to be for pain. I think no more pain is going to be felt by the mechanics of these cars, having to repair a lot of them. I gotta say, lots of cars out there on the racetrack as well. Looking through 27 cars, saying a qualifying time with 3 more yet to set a time in this session, those being Russ Telker, Daniel Salmon, and Jesus Rodriguez, running out 28, 29, 30 cars. There we go. I had to make sure. You could tell I was great with math in school as a kid, but still lots of participation in this race around a short track with changeable conditions, and this is going to be maybe the most sketchy race from the entire season.
One thing to really watch out for is going to be pit exit when drivers come out from the pit lane, if they're coming out of the pit lane at all after having to take any repairs, which is extremely likely in these conditions. that pit exit will be extra treacherous. There won't be many drivers running on that part of the pavement, so it'll be extra wet. There's a puddle there that they have to avoid before turning into turn one, and there's likely going to be traffic. So a lot of things to watch out if any of these drivers have to take repairs.
And even for the mandatory pit stop that these drivers have to take in this 40-minute race that we have coming up, that is going to be a sight to behold. Just looking through the season schedule that we have from season 1 of 2025 here from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, you got a lot of tracks that have those really sketchy and I would just say terrifying pit entries. Brands Hatch, that was pretty sketchy. Snetterton, that was pretty terrifying as well. Thruxton's pit entry is more irritating than anything else because it comes out of absolutely nowhere. Donington Park, though, as you just mentioned a couple of moments ago, Randall, that is going to be a really sketchy pit exit. Coming out on the left-hand side of the track, pretty much on the racing line, and one driver not taking the racing. Actually, taking the racing line if we were running on the international layout, which we are not. Edgar Sancinelli giving us a nice tour of this part of the track that we are not using today, and also getting a good view of some of the infield accommodations here at not Brands Hatch. Good Lord, that was a couple of like a month ago at this point. Donington Park, there we go. Second tries a charm. He's going to be giving us a view of the final chicane, not the final chicane, the final hairpin and the exit of the final chicane. I don't know about you, Randall, but that final hairpin around the international layout is hell on earth. So I'm very happy that we're not running that today.
It would be extra tricky in the rain, but right now we're going to take a look here at the starting grid. It looks like Ian Joyner is going to set the pole position time with a 1:27.75. Behind him, or next to him, Michael McConnell. Behind that pair is Juan Garcia and Antonio Reese. Antonio starting on the Masters Division pole. Richard Hammond, not Hammond. Boy, I've been watching too many Top Gear episodes. Richard Harwood is going to be starting P5 alongside your championship leader in the Masters Division, Jörg Manny. Kevin Adrian going to be starting P7. Jason Green in P8. Soren Garrett's in P9. Keith Dalton is going to round out your top 10. Jeff Whipker in 11th. Daniel Tufts in 12th.
And looking through the rest of the drivers that we've got in this field, we've got Boris Essman, the German, starting this race in P13. SMB's very own Joshua Wilkie going to line up alongside in 14th. Chris Murakami got ran at your top 15. Alan DeGast is going to make it an all-Masters row 8. Then we have Bill Walker in 17th. Daniel Verone, a PA native as well, starting in 18th. Peter True running at, we'll just say any British driver is running at their hometown track, even though all these drivers have their own separate hometown tracks throughout the season, but he'll be starting at 19th. Chris Montgomery in 20th. Jim Brewster in 21st. Edgar Sancinelli will be starting in 22nd. Andrew Love in 23rd. And Stevie Ray running at your top 24.
25th position is going to be Guido Marzucci. 26th, Michael Nelson. John Toms is going to start this race in 27th with Jesus Rodriguez alongside him. Daniel Salmon here on the back row, keeping company with Russell Telker. So those two drivers are going to have a lot of ground to make up. Russell in particular is normally pretty quick, so we'll see how much position he can make up.
Yeah, Russ Telker, a very fast driver in this. And there we go. The nice message from Adam. Stevie! There we go. Hopefully I got enough enthusiasm with how many exclamation points was that? I think that may have been 7 or 8. Oh, no, I'm not very good at counting numbers. I usually get lost after 3. I think Guido Marzucchi may not be taking the start. Neither will Jesus Rodriguez or Russ Telker. They have not joined the starting grid, which I believe is now up and rolling for this shortened and abridged pace lap. So not a lot of time for these drivers to get some temperature into their tires, and not a lot of time for these drivers to brace themselves for what's going to be a really challenging race. Looking at the track conditions as well, of course, iRacing marking it as moderately wet, and based off the fact the rain is still coming down, I have a feeling that's going to get even worse. Current ambient temperature 65 degrees, track temperature at a nice sultry 64, which is okay if you've got like a cooler at a football game, but outside of that, it's not very good for racing tires. But nevertheless, these drivers gotta be chilly here today. They're going to be chilly and cold, but hoping to have some warmth in their soul with a good result, and there's still gravel on the track. Dear God, and big crash coming to the line already. Some cars going up the track. That's Daniel Tufts going up into the air. May have to talk about that in a little bit, but the green flag's out, and the drivers are on their way and picking their way through the mist. It's going to be Ian Joyner leading them off into turn number 1. That's another car going off. I believe that may have been Boris Essman already in the barrier heading down the start-finish straightaway. Yurgmani going off the track. It's chaos. Heading down into turn number 1, Joshua Wilkie getting a piece of the action. Boris Essman rejoining the race after that off-track excursion. Look at that. Bill Walker ran, Alan DeGassis, Peter True, Jeff Wubker, Guido Marzuki. Already a lot of cars running into some difficulties, but we can't necessarily say it's too much of a shock.
No, not a surprise at all. The name of the game here today is absolutely going to be survival, and some of these drivers struggling with it already. Jörg Manning involved in that incident going to have a really big challenge. You're going to have a really big challenge to turn that season sweep into a mop here this week, and the spray coming down that front straightaway must have been absolutely terrible. We saw drivers getting collected as far as like row 4 or 5, so not even very far back in the field. We saw some contact there at the start. So if you're back in the back of this field and it starts to pack up at all, you're really going to be struggling for visibility.
Yeah, I will echo a line coming out of our esteemed producer, Mr. Adam Thompson's mouth a couple of moments ago. You can't see clucking shifts. So a lot of drivers may be going to be worrying about visibility all throughout this race, but some drivers already picking their way through the smoke and doing very well. Antonio Reese slotted in P2. Very good result for the Masters driver. Looking to challenge the dominance we've seen thus far from Yurgmani, which, considering Mani's all the way down in 19th, may be the shot to do it. I may have pulled the commentator's jinx off on him. The fact that he had done 5 races, won all of them. Come time for race 6, though, it may not be the same case. We've still got a whole lot of time left to go in this race. Only 2 minutes on the clock, 38 left to go, and a lot of stuff has gone down thus far. Let's take a look at, but you can see the contact with Daniel Tufts going up into the air, and Boris Essman, oh, he got hit. Yeah, he definitely got tapped, and that was the reason why he went off the track. And look at that, sliding through the grass, wig-walking back and forth as Boris Essman thankfully rejoins the race without any further incident, but a big calamity at the start.
And in conditions like these, once you get off track, it's more like a bobsled than a car. You're just kind of holding on for dear life and trying to get it back to the gray stuff, which has only relatively more grip. Doesn't have a lot of grip. We saw a bunch of cars coming into the pit lane. We're watching this turn 1 incident right now. Jörg Manning looked like maybe he got some help getting turned around there. Luckily, it looks like for him, not going to be much damage on that car. He was able to get going again and did not have much issues after that. So he's just got a lot of work to do here. But we see some contact there, back 3 wide into turn 1 in the wet. Is never going to work, and it worked out just like you would expect it to.
Worked out about as well as pouring a gallon of expired milk down the back of your shirt on a really hot summer day. Josh Wilkie getting involved in that. He got hit. Not only was he spinning, he got hit off the track. So a lot of drivers coming to blows. And I will say, talking about some of the rain races we've seen in the past here from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, and harkening our minds back to the race at, I believe it was Cadwell Park one season ago, as we see Chris Murakami's perspective in the 901 car. He was a car that sent Wilkie around. We may have to talk about the incident points come time for the end of this race, Randall. It's for these drivers, every 13x is when they get some sort of penalty, and then come time for 18, they get disqualified. So may end up seeing the dastardly old incident points rear their ugly head here at Donington.
This could be like a 24 hours of spa event where it's who gets the fewest penalties ends up winning this, with the number of incident points being very tight in this series. Going to be very easy to pick some up in these conditions. As the field starts to spread out like it is now a little bit, it should get a little bit safer for these drivers. But anytime you're trying to go for a move, there's always the risk of a 4X, whether it causes heavy damage or not. And 4 out of 13 is a pretty significant amount. Look at the amount of gravel there on track coming out of the chicane. I don't know where this gravel magically appeared. Apparently, the gravel ferry has visited Donington Park between qualifying and the race and just sprinkled it like fairy dust all over the exit of the chicane. So we saw that there at the start. The gravel was all over the place, even though nobody had really been out there. So another thing that iRacing has still been working on enhancing this season was more realistic gravel, and its behavior is more realistic once it gets on your tires, but how it gets on the track doesn't seem nearly as realistic as it used to be.
Yeah, I gotta say the gravel physics and some of the jankiness with that has reared its head a lot throughout this season. Whenever I see gravel on the track, I get bad flashbacks to the Formula Ford races we've seen at Brands Hatch. I gotta say, I feel like these Formula Ford cars and the way they are don't make it any better. Usually in racing, especially with the cars that have compatibility on the iRacing platform, you got two separate tires. You got the slicks, and then you've got the grooved wet tires. With the Formula Fords, on the other hand, you've got the same tires for both conditions. So even in the dry, these cars and the tires on them kind of acting like a paddle boat in a weird way, just slinging gravel onto the racetrack as they rejoin the race. So that's going to be something we have to talk about come time for the end of this race. I'm sure that final chicane, not really easy in dry conditions, let alone in the wet. The final sector of Donington, with really both of the configurations we have on iRacing at this point, whether it be the national one we're running here or the international layout with that absolutely horrendous final hairpin, it's really tough for these cars. It doesn't have like a natural flow to it like the rest of this track does. The rest of this track pretty much primarily designed all the way back in the 20s and used for racing pretty much ever since. But that final sector and that final chicane gonna really catch these drivers out. We got a good taster of it in qualifying earlier on when we were doing that onboard lap and saw the driver go off the track heading through the braking zone into that final chicane. But come time for this race, with the track continuing to get wetter and wetter with every passing lap, it's gonna be tough.
And right now, taking a look at the leaderboard, Ian Joyner, he was about 3.5 tenths faster in qualifying than the rest of the field, and he's quickly parlayed that into a nearly 3.5 second lead here in the wet conditions. So he was that off track there ahead. We saw somebody there on the inside of the track, off completely sideways. Was that Jörg Manning? No, it was Edgar Sancinelli is struggling down there at the bottom of the hill. We're going to take a look at Edgar to see who that was, if that was him exactly coming through. Yes, he gets nice and wide there and spins it around and ends up there parked on the left-hand side of the track with some oncoming traffic. Eventually gets it going back in the right direction. No damage on that car, so Edgar will carry on, but he's struggling out there with grip.
Yeah, really, the only damage for Edgar Sancinelli is a bit of a bruised ego. Thank you very much, Adam. You can't park there, Ed. Yeah, that's not good parking space at all. Doubly so in these wet conditions. You may end up getting absolutely smashed if you stay stopped there for way too long. But thankfully, these racers are trying to avoid that at all costs. I gotta say, that was a very odd tone of voice from me from smashed. I'm not really sure if I can ever replicate the other tone of voice that I said that in. But speaking of some drivers setting a good tone in this race, Antonio Reese, gotta commend this drive from Reese. He started this race up towards the front in fourth, making his way up 2 spots now, running in P2 and running effectively all by himself, as you have to go 3.5 seconds up the road to find Ian Joyner, and then go 3.5 seconds back to find Michael McConnell running at your top 3. The field spread out a teeny tiny bit with some sprinkling of battles, but I really think, Randall, this race, it's not about battling your competitors. It's really going to be about battling the conditions.
Absolutely, it is. Survival is the name of the game. We see some drivers that are made really, really good on the initial scrum in turn 1. Right now, your biggest mover, John Toms, up 13 spots, back in 14th position. So move from 27th up to 14th. Taking a look here at Bill Walker coming down the hill, seeing him go wide the same spot where Ed struggled. He manages to keep the wheels pointed in the right direction the entire time. So good for him, but a very, very tricky moment for him there at the bottom of the hill. He will be probably wishing he wore his brown driving suit.
Yeah, oh boy, that's going to be a dry cleaning disaster. Looking at side-by-side racing heading off into turn number 1 with York Monty and Jim Brewster. These two Masters racers battling for P3 of the Masters drivers as it stands at the moment. That's some close quarter stuff heading down the hill into crater curves of 3, about to head their way off into the old hairpin of 4. And I will continue to mention this for as long as I am living and breathing and doing these iRacing broadcasts. Why that corner was ever called the hairpin, despite the fact it isn't one, will always boggle my mind. And I will also like to make a correction as we see Soren Garrett. He's gone off the track, hang through turn number 5 and 6 in the number 21 car. That's going to take him out of a strong top 10 position, dropping down to lucky number P13. I think there's been a lot of stuff going on involving Salmon in the 659 car. Let's have a look at heading his way down the back straightaway.
Has to be in the final chicane, and possibly getting too much curb or getting into a puddle there, or even losing it under braking. Yeah, he just never gets onto the brakes early enough, and wisely runs it straight instead of trying to make that corner and probably causing another driver to have to avoid him, inevitably flipping through the air like somebody we know. But we see him just coming down the straight, going to miss his braking point, trying to get that braking in as late as possible, looking for the grip, and just doesn't get there, and backs off, runs into the runoff, and gets it going back in the right direction.
Yeah, an
Soren
easy
Garrett's
mistake to
issue.
make. Yeah, sorry to step on your toes there, Randall, as we take a look at that spin for Garrett, just losing it in the wet conditions. An easy mistake to make for both of those drivers. These wet weather conditions are really, really bad, but Jason Green may have just had a moment of his own. Look at that going off the track right in front of him. Not sure who that was. That may have been Bill Walker. And here, oh boy, that could have ended in disaster.
That was
Michael McConnell who went off the track, and Jason Green nearly coming in for the kill.
This Andrew Love going through the chicane and runs wide and goes through the gravel, going to pull more of that magical gravel onto the track for the rest of the drivers to enjoy, and manages to do this without really interfering with anybody else. Then he's going to drag that gravel across the racing line, trying to get out of the way of the approaching driver. We'll see what happened here with McConnell. He was ahead of this in turn 7. Oh, he loses it in turn 6 on the run up to turn 7. Ends up way out there in a different postal code, but gets it going back in the right direction without losing too much time here. And then somebody watching him, eyes on the prize, and comes right in, the slides in, and nearly hits him. So some disaster avoidance there. This race is going to be more replay than live action with what we got going on out here. And Jason Green just panic braking there at maybe a little bit too much target fixation there on McConnell. McConnell was running a P3, so that's a really painful spin for him.
Yeah, that's a real painful moment for the driver of the number 62 car. Thankfully, it was painful in the way that he lost out on a lot of time, and not painful in the way that he probably lost out on half of his race car and some vital bodily organs, because that could have ended in disaster. It was a matter of feet separating himself and Green when everything was said and done in that incident. Those two drivers should be counting their lucky stars, the fact they're still turning laps around this racetrack. As another car going off, that's Chris Montgomery. Now, Montgomery in the 313 car, he was running in the Formula V Weekend Warriors race yesterday, and really had a tough go of things. He was running inside the top 10 in the early stages, and then things really went sideways. He was leading in Spec 2 a couple of moments ago. We're hearing from Adam, but sadly things falling apart for him. Let's take a look at those painted curbs heading down the hill. Hits the outside curb coming at turn number 3 and loops it yet again, very similar to what we saw from McConnell.
Guido is currently in the lead after that issue with Chris Montgomery, so that puts Guido in the Spec 2 lead right now. He's up 11 positions from where he started, 1 position back from our big gainer, John Thompson. So he's having a really good race now, sitting at 14th overall, P1 in the Spec 2. And I want to draw our attention back to Jörg Manny, who's back up to 8th place. As we see Guido dip into the pit lane, we have some drivers now coming into pit lane to take their service for fuel. Jörg Manny's up to 8th place, and he is in 2nd for the Masters division currently. And if you've watched any of these races, you know that 2nd place in Masters is your potential leader, because it seems like Masters love to give up the wins. They always have some issue, either be it on pit lane or some wild incident on track that always seems to shake up the leaderboard in the second half of the race. So Antonio is going to be sitting rather nervously right now in the lead of the Masters division, but he's 2nd place overall, and he's not looking back.
All right, Randall, quit beating up on us old guys.
Beautiful introduction to bring Stevie into the booth. Stevie, not out there on the racetrack at the moment, but you were at the start, and I want to ask you about the really tough conditions that the drivers in the Formula Fords are dealing with at the present moment.
Yeah, that rain isn't fun, and those painted curbs, man, they're some of the worst I've encountered. And on top of that, I haven't practiced at all. Adam helped me this morning. I just got my computer up and running just before this, and don't even have everything set up yet. So I was just trying to hang back and run with the guys a little bit. But yeah, it's tough out there.
Stevie, how's everything working with the new GPU and CPU while we have you in here with the rain? This is a crash course for that GPU, buddy.
Yeah, it was. It was turning fine. I think it was still like running 130 FPS or something. So it was cranking pretty good.
You heard it here first. I am the computer master. All right, I'm going back to my hole now.
Thanks, Adam.
Get the drum roll out for that unintentional pun from Adam Thompson. A crash course, indeed.
It was.
That wasn't very nice at all there, Randall.
I call him like I see him. I'm sorry.
I guess it is our job in the commentary booth, but I will say, as much as I do like puns, I also like job security, so I will leave it at that. Richard Harwood running in fourth at the moment. I've really talked about the UK and Ireland driver, the number 19 car, but he's put on a pretty good fight. And speaking of fights, he may have a fight on his hands in the not too far off future with himself and Kevin Adrian. Those two cars now covered by 2.5 seconds, and last time by, you could see the pace differential between some of those racers. One driver's had an up and down race, literally and figuratively, is Daniel Tuff. Started this race popping a wheelie. I think he was running only on the left rear tire coming across that start finish line at the very start. And here's a look at him getting a move done in a rather commanding fashion on the 993 of Jim Brewster, the Masters driver, who it should be noted is also the admin of the Weekend Warriors Formula V series, which you can catch every single Saturday here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Lots of drivers having some very good shows at the present moment, and some drivers also making up a hell of a lot of spots at the same time. John Thompson, 12th, up 15 spots from where he started in this race. That 997 car seems to be on rails.
Yeah, it just goes to show you, if you can keep it clean in these conditions, you stand to gain a lot of positions. And it seems like he has some pace on top of that, which is even better. We see somebody plowing and then going sliding across the track behind him. That was Brewster struggling there at the bottom of the hill. This is the trickiest part of the course in the dry, let alone in the wet. So the weight is shifting around as you come across these elevation changes, and he gets out there, and as you see, as soon as his wheels touch that painted white line, it just really slides out from underneath him. A great save out of Brewster there, making the Virginias proud, and gets it going again. Doesn't lose too much time, and gets to show off them skills.
Yeah, kept that car clean and kept it on the racetrack. I will say, very good driving from Brewster to keep just his wheels green instead of the wheels and the tires. Guido Marzucchi, though, may have had a moment from the lead in Spec 2, hit that curb, and around he goes, and into the wall as well. So that's going to take the 819 car out of a leading spot in the Spec 2 category. So we've now had two Spec 2 leaders run into some difficulties. First it was Marzucchi, first it was Montgomery, I should say. Second, it's Marzucchi. Bill Walker, not a fan of that news at all.
No, not happy at all for him. We see Guido, unfortunately, running the nose of the car into the barrier. Shouldn't be too much damage, shouldn't affect the car too much. These cars don't rely on aero all that much, though it doesn't take much to slow them down. But that will definitely take the gas out of the car for the fart driver, and he's going to have some making up to do.
That was the weirdest fart sound in the world. Bill Walker, though, hoping not to get gassed out by Marzucchi, and oh boy, that was terrible. But the driver running at 15th at the moment, really showing that in conditions like this, you usually see a lot of interclass mingling, but I think in the wet weather, we're kind of seeing the Spec 2 drivers get shuffled out a little bit. You've got Bill Walker running at 15th, and Dalton running in P16, but after Dalton in that 16th spot in the number 25 car, you've got a string of not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8, but 9 Spec 2 drivers all running in a line, and that's a pretty big gap between all of those drivers as well, and plenty of them running into some difficulties. We saw Love go off the track through the final chicane, Salmon go off the track through the final chicane, Montgomery went off, Sancinelli went off, Marzucchi's going off. These conditions are incredibly tough, and it speaks volumes about the drivers that we've got in this series. The fact we've still got 25 cars still running out there on the racetrack, and these drivers are still going side by side too, as the Gassis and Tuff side by side coming out of the old hairpin, heading under Starkey's Bridge right now. Who's going to win out in this fight? Look at that from Tuffs. We didn't get a good view of his steering wheel there, but I knew that car was skating. It was like skipping a rock over a pond. in that number 34 car, but he keeps it going in a straight line for now, still running in 12th and still within striking distance of DeGassa, so we may end up seeing that battle heat up as battles going on all throughout the field, looking at this one with Brewster and Walker.
And I'm taking a look at the timing screen to see what we're looking at for the pit lane right now. From the few drivers that have come in for service, it looks like you're taking about 12 to 12 and a half seconds of fuel in order to make the rest of this race. But keep your eyes on the number 257, Edgar Santinelli. He came in on lap 11 and was stopped for only 8.9 seconds. So we may be awarding him the Thompson Trophy for fuel management when he comes back in for a second round of service. I've seen a very short time out of Guido Marzucci, and I think that spin into the pit entry may have caused the timing to think that he was coming in for service and counted that as a pit lane visit and shows him it stopped for only 1.7 seconds. I suspect that is not accurate.
Will not join in on the discussion talking about the TT, the Thompson Trophy, mainly because I don't want to get told to cluck off. So I will leave it at that. Michael McConnell running in 5th at the present moment, hoping not to run out of gas in that number 64 car. Already saw him go off the track earlier on, but since then he's actually put on a pretty decent recovery drive. Still run a little bit farther back than he probably had in mind. However, that front pack rather spread out. Ian Joyner, I got to talk about Ian Joyner's performance last time at Thruxton because it was a really good one for the driver of the number 8 car. For the second time in 2 weeks, he started from the pits. He missed the start yet again, but unlike what he did at Alton Park the week prior, where he took a pit lane start and ended up finishing in either the top 5 or decently inside the top 10. Either way, put on a pretty good drive then. Then come time for the latest race of this season at Thruxton, running in those wet conditions. It was a dogfight between Joyner and Monty, and man, it was absolutely fantastic. And Joyner going from last to first. He had grabbed the pole for the race, obviously started down pit lane, as I said, but just put on a rousing recovery drive to make his way back up to the front and grab his 3rd checkered flag of this season. Well, we got a lot of drivers maybe battling so hard that they may not even reach the checkered flag at all. Soren Garrett saw go off the track earlier on. Wilkie went off the track at the very start, and oh my God, Garrett's with a Code Brown moment.
The grip out here is just abysmal. Even going in a straight line, just a little bit of steering input is going to give them a problem. We see Wilkie really hanging the rear end out there and going to give up some time in that corner. Wilkie now going to have to get it done here on the straightaway. Going to be coming under threat from Garrett's if this continues, as we see him slipping and sliding there through that top of the hill corner, and now trying to keep Garrett's from getting a move done. But Garrett's is going to have a look on the inside. Is he going to get there in time? No, he's going to back out a little bit, fall back in line, and let Wilkie keep this position for now. Possibly looking to go into the pit lane. We're just past the halfway mark, and here comes Wilkie into pit lane for service. So going to try to pit out of this battle with Soren Garrett's, maybe get some gap built up in the pit lane. We'll see if Garrett's responds and comes to the pit lanes next time by.
I can't necessarily blame Wilkie for coming into the pits at all. In conditions like this, going side by side, it really shows off how challenging the conditions are, because just keeping the car in a straight line and keeping it out there on the racetrack is hard enough. But when you're going side by side and battling tooth and nail for some really important positions, which come time for the end of the season in a series as competitive as the Weekend Warriors, any position and any points that you can gain can make one hell of a difference come time for the season finale. So looking at that fight involving Wilkie and seeing him so sideways coming out of turn number 7, as that's a spinner for Chris Murakami in the 901 car. Right as we cut to Garrett's, the other half of that battle with Wilkie, there you can see Murakami lost it through turn number 5, went into the grass. That's a recipe for disaster. And oh, look at that, Garrett. That's another Code Brown moment for him in the number 21 car, seeing Murakami swap sides like he's flipping burgers in the 901 car. Thankfully, though, keeps it going and gets it back onto the racetrack with some grass picked up and definitely no longer having clean pans for sure.
Yeah, he was so far off track, he had to go back through customs to get back onto the racing circuit. So that's going to give up that spot for him. Luckily, kept the car clean. You saw as he came back onto the track, the car was looking good, and he had a bit of snap of oversteer and tried to overcorrected it, sent him off into the nether. So we got to see him back. Andrew Love now leading the Spec 2 division in 15th position. So we're seeing a lot of changing hands in this spec right now. But we'll see if he's able to keep it. He's running heavy curbs right now. Look at the curbs there in the final chicane. It looks like a lot of the puddles have disappeared, and now he's going to come in for service, going to give up that lead, and we'll see. Now it looks like Daniel Salmon is in the lead for Spec 2. He is yet to come to the pit. So Daniel Salmon, despite the issue he had earlier in the chicane, is going to be leading Spec 2 here for at least this lap. We'll see when he comes in for service. But keeping that nose clean and having a good race, up 14 spots.
Yeah, just keeping that car on the road despite the few times in which he didn't is part of the reason why he finds himself in this position right now. It really speaks volumes about how hectic this race has been in the Spec 2 category. We've had, I think 4 or 5 drivers grab the Spec 2 lead thus far in this race. Just shows you how challenging these conditions are. I mentioned, the track, you can see it right now. You can see it, you can see it because you can't see it. The track is still wet. Track temperature currently 65 degrees, no better than it was at the very start. And these cars are sliding around like a bunch of full trash bags full of mango pulp that were dunked in 5W30 motor oil and slid over the linoleum floor of a doctor's office. But with that terrible, absolutely convoluted simile out of the way, which I'm not even sure made sense, it really speaks volumes about how terrifying it is for these drivers behind the wheel sawing at those respective steering wheels. You could see the tires I nearly said swip swapping. That I don't think is a phrase in the English language at all, but the tires have so much to dare. Oh my God, I can't even speak at this point in time. These drivers have so much to deal with. These tires have so much to deal with. And I'm curious as to whether or not these tires have actually finally built up enough temperature for them not to be freezing cold. That is a real question that I've got in my mind because track conditions still not great at all. About how sideways these drivers are heading through some of the corners, I don't think it's entirely out of the memo that these cars have actually built some tire temperature.
Some of these drivers are going to be right now. The tires should be about as good as they're going to be, though. Some of the drivers that haven't come in, or most of the drivers that haven't come in for service yet, they're going to be running pretty thin on the fuel tank. So that's going to take some weight out of the car and cause it to be a bit more prone to sliding, but it'll be also easier to recover. So right now, probably ideal driving conditions, or as ideal as they're going to be, but the track, look at it. The rain's still coming down heavy. There's still some puddles out there, still searching for grip out here with Frito, and he still has to run wide there at the bottom of the hill on the track, looking more greased up than our producer Adam Thompson on free massage day, and it's absolutely wild. He's never able to seem to keep the wheel completely straight, which is going to really limit his pace, and he's running the karting line here through turn 7 and then the run up the hill. I suspect that this corner here is probably the driest of them all.
Yeah, I think it is absolutely dry. I'm gonna have trouble shifting that vision now. Oh boy, but Sancinelli running in 21st at the present moment, and I'm not touching that one. McConnell in 5th, right in front of Jörg Monty, who's put on a pretty good drive. Now up 1 spot as Kevin Adrian makes that call to come down pit lane. Monty, we saw him get involved in that lap 1, turn 1 incident, right? The drop of the green flag. And ever since then, he's been on the climb back through the field, which is, I would say, now complete, considering that he's at a net position gain at this point with Kevin Adrian coming in. Soren Garrett's joining him down pit lane as well. We're still waiting, though, considering we're only less than 12 minutes now to the checkered flag. We've got to worry about these drivers coming into the pits. Antonio Reese hasn't come down pit lane yet, but these 2 drivers at the north end of the field putting on really good pace. I think Ian Joyner last time by just set the best lap of the race at a 1-minute 20.870. So despite the fact they're still waiting for that call to come down into the pits, still proving that they have a heck of a lot of pace.
And Soren Garrett's now out of the pits. He was stopped for 10.7 seconds, and he was involved in a battle with Joshua Wilkie, SMB's own Josh Wilkie, who was stopped for quite a long time, 18.7 seconds. So Garrett's going to have that position and a few more behind him over Wilkie, so Wilkie's going to have some ground to make up, though Soren Garrett's may be in trouble with fuel. Also, trouble with fuel possibly is going to be Daniel Tufts, who was stopped for only 8 seconds, as we see Jörg Manny now battling here with McConnell to try to get another spot on track. McConnell was as high as third before an incident in turn 7. So he's still doing a good recovery run. He was back in third place. I don't know if how much of that was from pit strategy and the pit cycle working itself out, but Jörg Manny working his way up and trying to close down on Antonio Reese. He's got a lot of ground to make up to Antonio, who's about 22.5 seconds ahead, but that's just one mistake away.
Yeah, one mistake can spell disaster for any of these drivers up and down the grid, but Monty putting on a pretty expert drive at this point in time. Hey, if Antonio Reese gets struck by the falling anvils we mentioned a lot on these broadcasts, he may find himself in the lead in Masters category. And talk about a comeback. Antonio Reese has been just he's just been chugging along, doing his own race, no harm, no foul, thinking, yeah, Jörg Manny. I mean, at one point, he was all the way back down and was it like 19th or 20th overall, like 6th of the Masters racers. He's down second. I mean, granted, there's a pretty massive cushion between those two cars of about 22 seconds. But again, never know in these races. Anything can happen between now and the checkered flag, and that exactly is why all of you should stay tuned for the rest of this broadcast. And that's a crash heading down into the hairpin. And who was that coming to blows?
That was DeGasis there sitting at the apex, this perpendicular to the track. To see him there is going to be at the bottom of the hill, this really tricky spot. We're going to see Soren Garrett's coming in. Yeah, he is, and he's just parked. It looked like he slid out there on the gravel. Soren Garrett's nowhere to go. So had to avoid that puddle and just nowhere to go, and really kind of fixated in there on that car stuck on across the track. And hearts go out to Soren Garrett's, and we see DeGasis with an issue there. Oh, so I'm hearing now that he rejoined and he had a heavy amount of damage. You see there. Oh, he did rejoin. It looked like maybe he had spun and then come across the track after the spin, but no, he had heavy contact with that barrier, severe damage to the suspension, decides to rejoin the track and immediately skids across onto the racing line. And the stewards will not be happy with that.
Yeah, I can't blame them at all. That was... boy, that was just ugly more than anything else. That was a really unfortunate incident for Garrett's, really with nothing to go at all. But still got a lot of drivers looking to have a much better end to this race than either of those two did. Antonio Reese has had a pretty solid drive at the present moment, running in second. Michael McConnell now coming down into the pits in the number 62 car, running in fourth as it stands at the moment. And let's see how he exits out compared to the rest of the runners in the Spec 1 category. Ian Joyner, he is just driven off into the distance with the torch. He is completely checked out of this race. Now 9.5 seconds in front of Antonio Reese, is about 22 seconds in front of Jörg Manny. So that's a rather big cushion to have. McConnell going to drop down to 7th behind Kevin Adrian, Garcia, and Tufts, and also Jason Green, who I don't think we've talked about too much after he had the Code Brown moment to end all Code Brown moments, hanging down as the old hairpin earlier on in the race, but he's put on a pretty good drive, running in 7th at the present moment in the 160 car, and even up one spot from where he started. However, with McConnell behind, he may end up losing out and dropping down to 8th yet again.
And I hate to point this out, but that Soren Garrett's incident, who that really could have affected, we see another car off the track, was that Andrew Love there stricken on the right-hand side of the track. But who that incident could have also affected would have been Joshua Wilkie, if not for that slow pit time. So Wilkie would have been right there on the scene with Garrett's, if not for that slow pit time. We're on with Jason Green right now. He was stopped for 11.1 seconds, according to my timing sheet. So still there within range of what everybody else is stopping, but definitely shorter than most people. He might be doing a little bit of fuel saving here towards the end of the race, but looks to be in a good position. Normally, he's really good about being thrifty with the fuel management and having to take a little bit less on the pit stop. So he's probably still looking pretty good and going to have plenty to race with here at the end of the race. He's got McConnell breathing down his neck right now, who's freshly out of the pits after last lap. We're going to see what happened here with Andrew Love.
Got someone breathing down his neck. Reminds me of the last time I rode on a public bus here in the city of Philadelphia. Andrew Love hang down to turn number 4, and look at that, sideways through the corner and just loses it. That's a really upsetting way to have that spin go. You'd think, okay, yeah, spin, he was that loose heading into turn number 4. You'd think, yeah, he'd take a one-way trip into the outside tire barrier. But no, got it back underneath him and then spun it again and nearly spun it for a second time, trying to get through the grass, which is definitely the trouble spot to end all trouble spots in this race. Antonio Reese now in the lead, but he's coming into the pits. That's going to relinquish it back to Ian Joyner. Came down pit lane a couple of moments ago. Josh Wilkie, who we're following right now. Ooh, very bad time to have whatever in the world just happened to my voice a couple of moments ago. Wilkie, though, battling hard with Brewster. These two occupying the final 2 spots inside of the top 10. And Jim Brewster putting on a really good drive at the present moment, up 12 spots from where he started in this race. And we haven't really talked about him too much in the positions that he's gained, but Jim Brewster putting on a really nice drive here at Donington.
Yeah, whenever the conditions are like this, if you don't get mentioned on the broadcast a lot, you normally have a really good race. He's going to really feel the pressure from Wilkie now. We see another car off to the right there. I can't tell who that was, but another car stricken. We're just seeing it every lap there at the bottom of the hill. People are struggling with that section of the track, either in turn 4 or on the approach to turn 5. Or even as far as turn 6, really having issues keeping the car on the gray stuff, as Wilkie's going to be in prime striking position here. Using that slipstream, going to show the nose pretty early, pull along a side Brewster here and get the move done into the chicane. Gets there just about the time as they get on the brakes. He completes the pass, but he's going to have to run across that puddle. The second curb looking pretty clean right now in the chicane as they're able to be pretty aggressive. We're going to see Brewster going to dip into pit lane, come in for service, and Wilkie going to set his sights on McConnell ahead now.
And let's see if he will have enough time to get a move done on McConnell. That's a rather large gap to try and surmount, but I've seen stranger things in these races, and who knows, we could see a lot happen between now and the checkered flag coming up in less than 4 minutes time. Mind you, this race is absolutely flown by. Here's Juan Garcia in the lucky number 13 car, running in third at the moment is the Canadian, and just got moved on, and Kevin Adrian hang down that back straightaway. Let's take a look at the replay to see how he was able to get this pass done. You can see Adrian hit that curb, and that really compromised his exit coming out of turn number 8. Garcia basically blowing his metaphorical doors off. Really shows how much time you lose hitting the paint around any part of this track. So that's going to allow Garcia to slip up into third. They're running all by themselves at this point in time, as you have to go back 8 seconds to find Jorg Monty in P2, and Ian Joyner and Antonio Reese have just, I think I said this a couple of weeks ago, they have pissed off into the distance, because holy cow, 8.5 seconds between Joyner and Reese, and then 13, nearly 14 seconds from Reese back to Garcia. That is a massive gap to have. Meanwhile, in the Spec 2 category, it's no longer Daniel Salmon leading it, just barely able to pick that car through the mist, heading down the hill off it to turn number 4 right now. It's Chris Montgomery back in the lead in the 313 car. Jim Brewster, though, just spun in the 933 right as we were talking about him having a very good race. He drops down the running order with a mistake, and let's see it heading through turn number 4, which yet again Randall is going to catch another driver at.
Yeah, I think it's both the trickiness of turn 4 and a healthy dose of ye old commentator's curse as he approaches turn 5 and ends up not striking the barrier. Oh, there he's going to nudge it just for good measure, gets it back on track, and that's gonna put a wrinkle in a really good race for him. As we rejoin the live pictures, I do want to point out that Antonio Reese was stopped for only 11.4 seconds, and he's not really been in a position where he's been able to slipstream anybody because Ian Joyner was able to pull a gap so early. So he may be having to do some fuel management. Keep an eye on the timing screen for this car in second position, the 914. He might find himself coming back in. There's only 2 minutes left in the race, so he could be good, but he might be dodgy. We might see Jorg Vandy. If Jorg ends up winning this Masters race, I'm officially going to name him the janitor. He's swept the season. Now he's mopping it up here at Donington. If he pulls this off, he is officially Weekend Warriors' janitor. I've left Ron speechless with my brilliant nicknaming.
Bravo. I'm not sure if my claps were getting picked up on the microphone or not. I think it may have actually just broke my microphone there with how loud they were. So either way, though, it's Beautiful pun, and I may have to share a story from my own racing adventures with Jörg Mani, but I will hold that off until the interview later on. I think Jason Green may have just had a moment not terribly long ago. He's running in 6th, so despite my theory about the fact he was going to lose out some time, he has Sancinelli going off the track, coming out of turn number 8, so that's going to drop him down the running order yet again, currently running in P16, just lost out on 2 more spots to Dalton and Salmon. Nice to have 2 drivers with last names who end in just about the same way, albeit the rest of their name is just about as different as you could possibly get. Yeah, that was a very odd I mean, you got ON on either of them, so I guess it works. Maybe I don't know. I was terrible in English class. Bill Walker, I think he just got struck by a falling anvil or struck by lightning. And he's back running in 13th. So I guess the hamster wheel internet connection not helping him out at all. But he's rejoined the race now. And speaking of now we're starting to think about the checkered flag here, Randall, because with less than 10 seconds left on the clock, and Ian Joyner about to head his way off through the final chicane for the final time. I think we're taking the checker this time by. Yes, we will. Ian Joyner coming out of the final corner, going to take the checkered flag to win this rain-soaked race here at Donington Park, and we'll have to wait a while for Antonio Reese to cross the line and win it in the Masters category, finishing P2 overall. But still a very good drive from Reese, and that streak for Jörg Mani has now officially been broken at 5. Antonio Reese preventing that season sweep from Jörg Mani. So as much as he has been the janitor thus far this season, he has had that title taken away from him. He's going to end up in 5th at best, as we see Garcia in the number 13 car going to round at your overall podium. And we're going back to Soren Garrett, who's going to finish in 17th. And here's a fight between 2 drivers coming to the checkered flag. Salmon in 15th, Dalton in P14. It's a drag race right to the line, and winning it and finishing P13 is going to be, actually finishing P14, I should say, is Keith Dalton. Chris Montgomery ends up winning it in the Spec 2 category when everything is said and done. Edgar Sancinelli finishes a little bit farther back, and 22 cars going to take the checkered flag, which I don't know about you, Randall. It's a little bit surprising considering how terrible these conditions were for these drivers.
It was a pretty rough race for these drivers in these conditions, but if you look at the timing screen, it looks like Joshua Wilkie, despite the lap 1 turn 1 incident, gonna come home 8th, the last car on the lead lap. Only 8 cars on the lead lap, and that really speaks to the conditions, both how slippery it was, how dangerous it was, and how well Ian Joyner adapted to them, at just how much speed he had. So only 8 cars finishing on the lead lap. That is amazing in a field this size, and only 40 minutes on a track like Donington. Not the longest track, but not super short either. You don't expect to see this many cars a lap down, and it doesn't look like anybody really had to come in for another pit stop. So Adam Thompson is going to retain the Thompson Trophy for field management at this point. So no winners this week in this series, and maybe we'll see somebody pick it up in the Spec Racer Ford race here in a little bit, as we see Jason Green going for a slide through the final chicane and still manages to not hit anything. It's amazing.
I'm curious if anything is going to hit him. He's reversing, about to hit the curb yet again. That was the anticlimax end all anti. Oh, and there we go. Andrew Love coming in for the kill on Jason Green. That came out of absolutely nowhere. And Love getting hit again. That's himself and Sancinelli, I believe. Jörg Mani already wounded at left rear tire. About as boy. Here we go. Let's see. Oh, bang, bang. Oh. There we go. Boris Essman upside down. And I think I blew my microphone out with how loud that was. So hopefully I won't have to get a new one, because this one is quite pricey. And yeah, that's quite pricey for the damage on those 2 race cars as well. I didn't know what I was seeing until I looked at the track map graphic, and I knew that we were going to see a hellacious collision, but it was what's the opposite of hellacious? Oh, we'll just say it was a fantastic drive for me and Joyner, as the synonym escapes me. He wins it here at Donington Park, in a rain-soaked Donington Park at that. Antonio Reese going to finish right behind in P2, winning it in the Masters category in the process. Juan Garcia going to end up in P3. Kevin Adrian will finish this race in 4th. Jorg Monty going to round out your overall top 5, finishing 2nd of the Masters racers. We have Jason Green finishing in 6th. Michael McConnell in P7. Josh Wilkie ends up finishing this race on a pretty good recovery drive in P8. Last of the cars to end up on the lead lap. Chris Murakami in 9th, and John Tom is going to round out your overall top 10.
Chris Montgomery is going to come home in a P11. Bill Walker, despite the issue there he had towards the end of the race, still with a very solid finish, coming home at P12. Keith Dalton in 13th. We saw him engaged in that last lap drag race with P14. Daniel Salmon. Edgar Santinelli had some troubles there down in turn 4, but still comes home 15th. Soren Garrett's got collected in an incident that was not his fault. Manages to finish in 16th place. Richard Harwood in 17th. Jim Brewster going to round out the top 18, the famous top 18. Jeff Whoopker 19th. Andrew Love, who we saw off track a couple times, will round out your top 20.
And looking through the rest of the finishers that we have in this race, the finishers and non-finishers. The finishers include Boris Espin, Daniel Verone, and Daniel Actually, I don't believe any of them actually took the checkered flag, so what am I saying? Peter True, Ellen DeGassis, Guido Marzuki, Jesus Rodriguez, Michael Nelson, Stevie Ray, and Russ Telker, riding out the 30 cars that are classified from this race. I think a few more dropped out by the end of it all. And looking through, Daniel Verone and Boris Espin did finish the race. Peter True and everyone back did not. But that does it from the results here from round number 6 of this Formula Ford Weekend Warriors season. But Randall, got some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area. We've got our Masters winner of Reese and our Spec 1 winner of Ian Joyner. So I'll let you do the honors and pick who would you want to have a chat with.
I have managed to get my hands on our overall winner, Ian Joyner. Ian, we hardly talked about you in this race because, quite frankly, you were so boring. Like, you were just too fast. You made a big gap. You managed to stay out of trouble dealing with all the lap traffic. Normally, when you're winning these races, you don't have to deal with a lot of traffic, but you lapped all the way up to 9th position by the end of the race. What was it like dealing with all that all that slower traffic today in these wet conditions?
Yeah, it definitely didn't feel boring. I mean, it's good news, isn't it? Everybody wants to race, but also everybody wants to win by miles. So it's good when it's boring from a racing point of view, as long as you're the one who's at the front. But it wasn't boring to drive at all, no, because I never actually spun, but I was just chatting to Antonio a few times. I lost a couple of seconds in one corner as I had to collect it, having just touched the white line. So survival, very difficult. Not having any contact, tricky as well. But it was good fun. Definitely a lot easier than last week. It's just the classic thing where I got away well, but then as soon as Michael and the guys started fighting, you just get that little bit of buffer, and then it sort of becomes just trying to keep it in one piece and not screw the pit stop up. Didn't even miss the start this week, so I can't complain too much.
That's good. We saw at the start of the race, I mean, I'm sure you were focused down track towards turn 1 and trying to get a good run through turn 1. Did you get a good view of the carnage that ensued behind you when you didn't go out of the chicane? Like, I'm not saying you backed them up at all. You just kind of kept pace down the front straight, and it became just absolute bedlam behind you. Did you get a good view of that in your mirror, or were you too focused down track?
I didn't really see it, to be honest. I could just see the gap. With the spray, it's hard to see much beyond the car, especially if there's any distance. So, no, I didn't really see it. I became aware of the fact there was, cars in front. And when it happens that early on, someone's had a bad lap. I didn't actually watch it back. I didn't see what happened to a few of the people in the top 5. I know there was obviously something. Antonio drove really solid. There wasn't really a huge gap pace wise. It's just over time, it's just edging out a little bit.
It was my first race covering the Formula Fords this season, but it looks to me this is your 4th stamp on the season with your 4th victory. How's it feeling out there? You should be in a pretty commanding position going forward for the second half of the season.
Yeah, it's going pretty solid, really. Again, they've certainly not all been this close by any means, and I've made plenty of user error. Sorry, I could definitely do with someone on the pit controls. But it feels like a good place to be. Just keep keep trying to plug the results in.
Well, is there anybody you'd like to thank or shout out before we let you go celebrate this victory?
Yeah, it's against the league. Yeah, it's I think someone, I can't remember who it was. Someone came on the radio and mentioned Stevie making it wet in the UK. But you know how much work it is to put these things on. So yeah, thanks to everyone who's doing that, including you guys for commentating it. It's really nice to be able to look back. Shout out to Keith and Richard, a couple of guys from the UK who joined for the first time today as well. Nice to see them on track. Yeah, thanks all.
Well, congratulations on your win, and I have a feeling we'll be talking to you again in the near future.
Cheers, guys.
That was Ian Joyner, your overall winner. And Ron, have you tracked down Antonio?
Yes, I absolutely have. Antonio Reese now joining us in the commentary booth. Antonio, the Masters win. The first time we could say anyone other than York Monty has won in the Masters class this season. No hard feelings, York. But Antonio, well done on grabbing the Masters win and P2 overall in the process here at Donington Park. Talk us through it, man.
Antonio!
Surprise! It's me, oh Lord. Anyway, was a good race. I didn't expect to get that. I was thinking maybe I die on the first lap, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 laps still alive. So okay, let's go. Yeah, that's most of the feeling for me. Every lap I was trying to survive, not making mistakes. And I was really doing a lot of mistakes every lap. So it was kind of a survival mode. Yeah, it was not easy to keep the car on the track, I can tell you.
You brought up a very good point there, talking about how this race seemed to be a survival of the fittest, and think no better words can describe this race that we just saw here at Donington Park. I want to ask you about the challenge of just keeping yourself in a good mindset and keeping the car on the road at the same time, because there's a lot of stuff riding on your driver's minds in a race like this, even if it was in the dry, let alone with the pouring rain.
Yeah, on the rain is really tricky and it's really challenging for the concentration. You need to really focus and not distracted with anything. Otherwise, any small distraction, you dead, basically.
Yeah, I think
So I was, yeah,
yeah.
I
Sorry
was,
to step on your toes there, Antonio. I was just gonna mention that's a good point to raise, talking about how any distraction can be an absolute game ender. But no distractions here today, and grabbing your first Masters win of the season. I want to ask you about
yeah.
the fact that it's now we're now officially set to begin the second half of season 1 for 2025. How well does this set you up for that second half?
Oh, I'm always the same mindset every time. The first half of the season or second half or middle of the season, I always have the same mindset. It's just to keep friendly, racing, hard racing, with the respect for everyone. So it's basically always, all the time, every race.
Yeah, it's just week after week, the drivers in this series always put on really good shows, and really happy that you'll be with us all throughout the season, keeping our fingers
Oh,
crossed. And now the next
I'm the
time,
happy guy to be with you.
oh, well, very, very happy that you're happy to be a part of this
Thank
commentary
you,
booth,
guys.
and I'm sure you're also happy about the win. I'm going to ask you
Yep.
about Cadwell Park in 1 week's time, continuing on our UK tour and
Oh,
running
boy.
out a really narrow one in 1 week's time. So, what are your thoughts coming into that race?
Yeah, that track is very difficult because it's a track I don't drive very much. I don't know. I have no memories for this track, so it's going to be a little bit difficult for me. But I'll be there, whatever.
It'll be nice to see you back out on track yet again, Antonio. Well done on the
Thank you.
Masters win here at Donington. And before you let go and celebrate, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, shout out Steve Ray and you guys on the broadcast for the sponsors and as well for the drivers. So, and for the viewers. So thanks for everyone.
Thank you, Antonio. Congrats, sir.
Cool. Thank you. All right. See you next time. Take care.
See you next time, Antonio. That right there was Antonio Reese, your winner in the Masters category here at Donington Park. And we mentioned the sponsor, and I was just going to raise it before we have some chicanery going on here, potentially involving our producer, Mr. Adam Thompson. But I will say our sponsor was unfortunately not out here on the racetrack this week, but I would like to thank Paul Stevens for making today's broadcast of the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors possible, and thank all the Weekend Warriors members as well for their continued support of these streams, tuning in, liking, subscribing, doing all the jazz, and also showing the love in the YouTube chat as well. But Mr. Thompson, in the the virtual production hauler, do you have something up your sleeve? Are we going to do what you did at Silverstone to kick this season off and maybe barge into the chat, possibly?
I'm wondering if you would like to come with me here, Ron, because we've got some people in there. So I guess the first question would be, who do you want to interview so I can get to him? And then after that, you and I are hopping into that race room, and we're gonna barge right through those doors, Stevie. So whatever is said on the end of this broadcast, I apologize.
Oh,
Go
dear
get 'em.
sweet baby, merciful Jesus. I'm looking through. I feel like a good driver to have a chat with would maybe be Michael McConnell, because he had a pretty up and down race.
All right, let's do it.
I think he may be our target. Alrighty. You want me to come with?
Oh yeah, you're coming with me. You got this one, Ron.
Oh boy, here we go. Put on the scuba gear and joining this race room. Here we go, Adam. This is gonna be some fun.
Oh, fuck off, Thruck.
Oh boy, Adam is in here. Hello, gentlemen. I should state right off the bat that we are still on the air. We are hunting one of you down to have a chat with, and that driver we are hunting down is Michael McConnell. Michael, are you still here in the chat? Are you on the microphone right now?
Yes.
Alrighty, that's I could definitely sense the hesitation in there, but look. Trust me, this is just as awkward for me as it probably is for all of you in this chat right now. But Michael, that was a really wild one here at Donington for the Formula Fords, and it's doubly weird considering some of the drivers from the Spec Race or Ford race coming up later on are also in here as well. But Michael, talk us through that wild one here at Donington.
Well, it's kind of disappointing. That white line. Yeah, I'm actively driving right now, so I'm trying to.
I'm so sorry, Michael. Oh boy.
But yeah, slipped on a white line, and that was all it took to lose like 3 positions.
Well, Michael, I do have a question for you here before I get Ron in. So, Michael, we have chatted in and out throughout the time that I've known you, and one thing you've never mentioned. I brought up your costume, right, and what you were wearing there for your SDK profile picture. And there's actually a YouTube channel out there where people can go watch some of that stuff. Would you mind dropping that YouTube? Where can people go see that?
Furball Racing, I think that's what the name is.
There you go. You heard it here first, Ron. You want to take it back now? But yeah, please, guys, if anybody has questions like I've had questions about this outfit that Michael's wearing in his profile picture, go watch Furball Racing. It'll all make much more sense.
Oh yeah.
I gotta say as well, Michael, in my entire time covering the Weekend Warriors dating back to about a year ago at this point, seeing that outfit with a low STK image is always nice to see. So we appreciate that little bit of added flair into the photo for you there, Michael. But we'll let you get back on track. I assume you're going to be a part of the Spec Race or Ford race later on, potentially?
Yes, I think I will be.
Alrighty, well, awesome to see you back out on track for that one. So, you want to give us a preview as to how that race is going to be?
I don't know. I've only raced this car a few times, so very rare. We'll see how it goes.
That we certainly will, and I appreciate your brutal honesty in that regard. But Michael, thank you. I would usually say thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, but thank you very much for leaving your location information on so we could track you down. And before we let you go and get some more practice time in for the Spec Race Reward race, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
I don't think so.
Do the bunny
Okay,
costume.
check the mail.
Best answer.
Was it really planning on it?
They're ready. Fair enough. Okay. Well, we'll let you drivers get back to practicing for the Spec Racer Ford, and we'll dip out of here after stealing some cookies that you've got in this little race chat here as well. But
All right. Yeah, it's been a
Michael,
pleasure.
it's been something. All right, but Michael, thank you for entertaining us with this interview, and excited to see you on track and all you drivers on track for the Spec Racer Ford race later on.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Don't forget.
Bye.
Michael, I just shared a setup with you.
And oh boy, I think I'm not even sure the best way I can describe that. I'm pretty sure that I've felt less awkward peeing myself in a classroom. But Adam, Randall, I'll bring it back into the discussion to get the flack off me for a little bit. Thoughts on a really hectic one here at Donington?
It was as painful as I expected it was going to be. It was wet. It was like an uphill and downhill slip and slide through most of the track. It's not a surprise that we saw the cream rise to the top, even though Jörg Manny had an incident early in the race, still finished in the top 5 overall. Not a big shock there. These conditions are really going to separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to driving skill, and that was very evident here today.
I'm not sure what in the world wheat and chaff means. The last big word I learned like that was mayonnaise. So I can't really say anything in that regard, but still a fantastic schedule of races to look forward to here from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. In 1 week's time, we're going to be running at Cadwell Park, and then we've got Okayama, the Saxon Ring, Knock Hill, Zolder, and VIR to bring this fantastic season to a close. We've also got some action with the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors going to be running later on here today on Slow Motion Broadcasting, and stay tuned for that one because that is going to be a show as well. And also just hit the subscribe button and the notification bell here to Slow Motion Broadcasting so you never miss out on any of the racing action. But I think for this broadcast, and to give us a little bit of time to decompress before the Spec Racer Ford race at Silverstone later on today, I think that will just about do it. And so for myself, not Ron Rons, that's incorrect. For myself, Ron Maunz, second tries the charm, can't even get my own last name pronunciation right on this broadcast. May God have mercy on my soul. For myself, Ron Maunz, Randall McGrew joining me in the commentary booth, Adam Thompson working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler, and all those drivers in the Spec Racer Ford chat who just got the scare of their life with us invading their chat a few moments ago. I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too far off future. And plenty of opportunities to make up some time and lose it as well. The green flag is out. The drivers are on their way.